Thank you, everybody. We're going to get done with this in time for you to get to the halls when they open up, well before then. I'd like to tell you first a story about my background. I grew up in Elizabeth, New Jersey, which is right across the river from New York City. And the biggest thing in town was Singer Sewing Machine, which in its day dominated the world in manufacturing of sewing machines, had a huge factory that was the biggest individual building in the world. My grandfather was a foreman there. My dad ran about a third of the factory. I worked there summers in high school and college. And I went past 10 years ago and everything was gone. Nothing is made there anymore. Everything is made outside of the country. And I cried then for what we had lost, what the city, my family, the state, the country had lost. And during my career selling machine tools and foundry equipment, I came to company after company that used to be leaders for the world, making shoe equipment, making textile machinery, making all kinds of things, absolutely gone and replaced with product from offshore. So when I retired from Aggie Charmy, I said, I'm going to do something about it, and you're going to hear some more about that today. So I appreciate you being here and listening. So despite the problems that we've had, there are some good signs. You can see here that FDI, which is foreign direct investment, that foreign companies investing in the U.S., was at a record level in 2015. We're number one in the world. And 70% of that FDI into the U.S. is in manufacturing. So the foreign companies have said, this is a great place to manufacture. In fact, that 70% is up from 36% historically. Deloitte says that we're number 2 in competitiveness and going to be number 1 by 2020. I think they're overly optimistic. If you look at our trade deficit, we're not that competitive yet. The reshoring and FDI together, so reshoring by U.S. companies, foreign direct investment by foreign companies, balanced offshoring in 2014 and 2015. So we've brought back as many jobs as we lost. I'll give you some more details on that. Some of the reasons why things are looking a little better is that the companies are starting to recognize the costs of offshoring. Where they used to look only at the wage rate or only at the price they could buy it for, they're starting to add in the carrying cost of inventory, the quality issues, the intellectual property, the benefit to innovation when you bring engineering and manufacturing back together so the engineers and the workers can work on the product together. So globalization has peaked, and localization is the new trend. Companies finding that it makes sense to make the product where it's going to be consumed. The U.S. has some advantages. We're the largest market. We have the largest trade deficit, so we have the greatest opportunity to benefit from localization as it occurs. The foreign companies are understanding this. It's taking longer for the U.S. companies to do so. This gives you some data on that trend I described, where 10, 15 years ago, we were losing approximately 200,000 jobs net to offshoring, and by 2015 and 2014, we were just about breaking even, bringing back just about as many as we were losing. So we'd say we've won the battle, but the war is still raging. And some more positive news. I did a regression line here from 1997, just before offshoring really got going, to 2006, just before the Great Recession, just before reshoring started to come on more strongly. So the blue line is based on the blue rectangles, and then the red line shows what's happened since. And so the actual 2016 manufacturing employment is about 2.3 million higher than you would have projected in 2006 if you thought the trends were going to continue. So I think this is some pretty good proof that times have changed and we're not losing as much as we used to, and we're bringing back a lot more than we used to. But the bad news is it's not happening fast enough. We still have about 4 million jobs offshore that we need to bring back. The GDP isn't growing measurably, manufacturing is static, productivity is slow, investment is down. There's a lot of negatives at the same time. Now, part of the problem is that the U.S. dollar has been driven higher by the financial flows. People all over the world want to park their money in the U.S. because we're the safe haven. We're the place where they know things are going to be safe. And that makes the U.S. a great place for banks, but not a good place for factories. The factories aren't competitive because the dollar is too high. our skilled and even unskilled workforce is in short supply. I was in Mexico speaking last week, and the Mexicans are confident they're going to keep taking jobs for us because we don't have enough tool makers, and we don't even have enough people to fill that want to fill the unskilled jobs in manufacturing. They believe it's their turn. It's our job to prove they're wrong. So here's some interesting information. At a given level of consumption, in other words, if the GDP stays about constant, the only way to grow manufacturing is to either export more or import less. So imagine, you might say, well, how about just organic growth? I'd say if GM produces an extra car here, but the total consumption of cars stays the same, that means we imported one less. Okay? So the only way to grow is to export more or import less, and importing less is easier. If you look at the table there, if a product's made in the U.S. and sells in the U.S. for $100 and competes with one that's made in China, sells here for $100, so the pricing is about the same. The one made in the U.S., if it sells in China, you have to add in duty and freight and packaging, value-added tax, carrying cost of inventory, language in China, how to deal with the Chinese laws. You better sell it over there for 115, and the one the Chinese sells here for 100, they could sell in China for 85. So our product that's competitive here with China is not competitive by 30% when it's in China. So my conclusion, clearly for most of your companies, it's a lot easier to compete here. So the first action is to take the American market back. So our challenge is to balance the $500 billion per year trade deficit. When we do that, we'll cut the U.S. budget deficit by about 50%, strengthen the middle class, we hear about all the time. We will increase U.S. manufacturing by 25 to 30%. And to get the capacity to make that increase, even if it happens over 20 years, we'll have to buy 25% more machine tools every year than we would have otherwise to increase that capacity, which will strengthen recruitment because the students and the guidance counselors will see that manufacturing is growing again, and we can then have productivity improvement and growth in manufacturing employment. There isn't a choice between those two. We can have both as long as we balance the trade deficit. So here's a virtuous cycle. As we reshore more, we increase capacity utilization. As that happens, we invest more. We buy the great products you see around you here at IMTS. As that happens, productivity goes up, which makes us more competitive. We then reshore more, and we continue around the cycle. In the same sense as we reshore, the students and the guidance counselors and the parents and the media sees, manufacturing's coming back. Therefore, recruitment gets better. We get more students, we get smarter students coming in, we get them trained better, we get a more skilled workforce, which increases productivity, which gives us more competitiveness, which increases reshoring, and the cycle continues. So what do we need from the government? I've listed the things here I presented in Washington yesterday. First, number one to me always is skilled workforce. We need a skilled workforce recruited as well as large and as well trained as in Germany and Switzerland. Essentially the apprenticeship model which works so well there. I believe it would improve our price competitiveness by 5% if we did that. The dollar is way too high. It's gone up 30% in the last couple of years. I would take it down by 30%, more or less what Japan, China, Korea, Germany have done with their currencies, and that would improve our competitiveness 10 to 15%. Corporate tax reforms. Companies leave here to move to Ireland and move their factories offshore, partially because our taxes are too high, probably pick up 2%. We should have a value-added tax, so the products that are being imported would be taxed at 15% when they come in, and our products that are being exported would get a credit of 15%. It would make us instantly much more competitive around the world. So you put together a couple of these things, and bam, we're right back there in the fight. So to show you the impact of US dollar, I used to show this curve only up through 2014 when all the other countries were going up and we were static. And this is indexed unit labor cost in dollars in manufacturing. But the last 2 or 3 years with the dollar going up so much, the other countries relative to the dollar are gaining competitiveness. And that's what we have to deal with on the US dollar front. So, what do we need from you, from the companies? Skilled workforce, recruit, have apprentices, have certificates, NIMS, MSSC, invest in advanced manufacturing. Consider the environmental impact when you decide where to source. If you do it here, much more environmentally conscious. If you have cases of reshoring, there's a place on our website, reshorenow.org, to report that. And if you do that, you get a free Manufacturing is Cool t-shirt, okay, made in the United States out of U.S. cotton. So anybody who reports their case of reshoring for their own company or something they're making for another company gets one of these shirts for free, in addition to getting all the publicity that we can bring you for your success. You can use our total cost of ownership estimator free online software for sourcing decisions, say by a big company, or siting decisions, but also for selling. So you can, the reason this is powerful is because most of the big companies go only where the wage rates are lowest, it's called wage arbitrage, where they buy where the purchase price is cheapest, but they don't look at the total cost. They skip all the other considerations, the carrying cost of inventory, the impact on innovation when you bring engineering and manufacturing back together, all the costs that they should be considering. And when they do that, they'll find that you can close roughly a 20% price gap between here and there. So I took the first batch of cases we had in the U.S. against China, and where the users had gone in and used the TCO system, and in about 5% of the cases the U.S. had the lowest price, but in 53% of the cases we had the lowest total cost of ownership. Difference is 48%. We'd like to be conservative about it, so we say in about 25% of the cases, if you at your company or your customers would use total cost instead of price to make the decision, 25% of the work would come back. But here's an interesting case. Mori Corp makes large printed circuit boards out in a suburb of Chicago. They had a quality problem with the housing. They were forced to get housings made in Illinois. They fixed the quality problem. They cut their inventory of the product by 94%, so an factor of 18 reduction in the inventory. They came to me about a year ago. They were about to lose a $25 million order to China over price. We did the total cost of ownership analysis. They took it into a customer. They saved the order. So if you're facing offshore competition and something like that would help you, come to us. We're delighted to help you. That's what we're here for. So if you're here looking at equipment to invest, to some extent you have a choice. Should I buy some of this wonderful new equipment and invest, or should I just have the product offshored, outsourced, into China, India, somewhere else? And if you look at that analysis and you say there's a huge wage difference, pretty hard to justify the investment here. If you say there's this kind of a price difference, still can't justify the investment. But if you do the total cost of ownership and you see there's only 2-3% difference, now if you buy the most automated machinery, it's very feasible you'll have a high ROI. So you need to do the right metric, and you'll find if you do that, in many cases, you do not have to sacrifice quality, delivery, time to market, and your employees to be profitable. We're coming out with a corporate social responsibility estimator that will help the companies analyze when they bring the work back, what that does to the U.S. economy, how many more jobs at their place and at the supplier, what taxes they'll pay, how much less safety net they'll take, so how much they're helping the U.S. economy, and also what it does to the world environment. When the product's made in China, the electricity is dirtier, the factories are more polluting, and then you have to drag this stuff halfway across the world. Whereas if you make it here, all those are simplified. So we're in the process of developing that so companies can make better decisions. So here's an opportunity for you to participate. How many of you want to make or sell more in the U.S.? How many of you would like to do that? Okay? If you pull out your business card and you write the letter A on it, and where's my beautiful assistant, Amber? Give the card to Amber, and we'll get back to you to help you. Who wants your customers to make more so you can sell them more product, sell them more machine tools? Anybody? Write B on it. We'll come out there and help you. Who has a reshoring case to report? Something they reshored for themselves or they reshored for one of their customers? All right, well, you're all an opportunity, Greg. Same people. Great. Put the C on it. You can put all three letters on one card. Give them to Amber, and we'll get back to you and offer our help in helping you bring manufacturing back to the United States. So we're a not-for-profit. I founded it 6 years ago. We have 24 sponsors. 16 of them are at IMTS. You can see them here. I very much appreciate the support they've given us to make it possible to accumulate the data, be available here to work with you. This is how we think of ourselves as the little Dutch boy with a finger in the dike holding back the threat of offshoring. And with your help to repair that dike, the country will be a better place for us and our children. Thank you very much.